other side.
The rain was a relentless drumbeat against the window of my Seattle apartment, a gray curtain that blurred the world outside as I stood frozen, clutching a postcard that shouldn't exist. My name is Claire, and for 5 years, I'd lived in a fog of grief, haunted by the absence of my daughter, Abby, who vanished at 7 years old. The postcard was simple, its edges worn, the handwriting unmistakably her shaky but deliberate, the loops of her letters a painful echo of the notes she used to leave on my fridge. Asking for cookies or extra bedtime stories. Mom, I'm okay, it read. Come find me. Below, an address, Willow Creek, Oregon. My heart pounded, a chaotic mix of hope and dread. Abby was alive. But why now? Why this cryptic message after years of silence, after the world had told me to move on? 5 years ago, Abby disappeared on a summer evening, the kind where the air hums with fireflies and possibility. She'd been playing in our backyard, her laughter a melody that filled the spaces of our small, cozy home. I'd stepped inside for a moment, just a moment, to answer a phone call from work, a call I could have ignored. When I returned, the yard was empty, her swing still swaying gently in the breeze. The police searched for weeks, then months, combing through our neighborhood, dragging the nearby river, chasing every lead until they fizzled out. No ransom note, no witnesses, no trace. They called it a tragedy. Suggested she'd wandered off, maybe drowned. I refused to believe it. Abby was careful, bright, the kind of child who memorized every rule I gave her, who held my hand crossing the street even when she didn't need to. But the world moved on, leaving me alone with my guilt. My life a hollow shell of what it had been. The postcard changed everything. I stood in my apartment, the rain a steady rhythm outside, and felt something stir inside me. Hope. Fragile but fierce, I packed a bag, my hands shaking as I stuffed clothes, a photo of Abby, and her favorite stuffed rabbit into a duffel. The drive to Willow Creek was 6 hours, the road winding through forests that seemed to swallow the light, their branches heavy with rain. The town was small, barely a blip on the map, with a main street lined with faded storefronts, a diner that smelled of burnt coffee, and a quiet that felt more like secrecy than peace. I rented a cabin on the edge of town, its walls creaking under the weight of the Oregon storms, its windows fogged with condensation. Armed with the postcard, I went to the local police station, my heart in my throat, Abby's photo clutched in my hand. Sheriff Holt, a man with tired eyes and a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, listened politely as I explained. I showed him the postcard. It's ink-smudged, but legible. No record of an Abby here, he said, his tone gentle but firm, the kind reserved for someone he pitied. You sure you're not chasing ghosts? Ma'am, grief can do funny things too. The mind, I pushed the postcard across the desk, begging him to look closer, to see the handwriting that was so clearly hers. He sighed, suggesting it might be a prank, and handed me a pamphlet for a grief counselor. I left the station, my frustration boiling over, and started asking around town. The librarian, the barista at the diner, the clerk at the gas station. No one had seen a girl matching Abby's description, but their eyes flickered when I mentioned her name, a hesitation that felt like a lie, a wall I couldn't break through. I pinned flyers around town, my hands trembling as I stapled them to telephone poles and bulletin boards. Missing Abby, 12 years old. They read, though picturing her at 12 was a stab to the heart. In my mind, she was still 7, her dark curls bouncing as she ran, her smile bright enough to light up the darkest days. I spent my evenings in the cabin, staring at the postcard, tracing her words, willing them to tell me more. On my 3rd day in Willow Creek, something shifted. I was sitting on the cabin's porch, the rain a soft drizzle now, when a girl approached, maybe 9 years old, her hair in messy braids, her sneakers muddy from the wet grass. She handed me a crumpled piece of paper, her eyes wide with curiosity. I drew this for you, she said, then darted away before I could ask her name. The drawing, stopped my breath. It was the cabin I was renting, its slanted roof and peeling paint captured in childish detail. In the foreground stood a girl with dark curls, wearing a blue dress with a ruffled hem, a dress I'd sewn for Abby when she was 6, a one-of-a-kind creation I'd spent weeks perfecting, stitching tiny stars into the fabric because she loved the night sky. My hand shook as I traced the lines, the girl's face a blur, but her stance so familiar it hurt. How could this child know about that dress? I went back to the police, clutching the drawing, my voice unsteady as I demanded they investigate. Sheriff Holt's patience had worn thin. "Mrs. Larson," he said, using my maiden name, "you're projecting. This could be any child's drawing. You need to let this go." He suggested therapy again, his pity thicker now, almost suffocating. I left, my anger a tight knot in my chest, and headed to the library, hoping for answers. The librarian, Martha, was an older woman with kind eyes and a voice softened by years of reading stories to children. She listened as I poured out my story, her hands folded on the counter, her gaze steady. I showed her the drawing, Abby's photo, the postcard. Her eyes softened when she saw the dress in the drawing. "There was a girl," she said quietly, glancing round to ensure we were alone. "A few years back, she came in here, scared out of her mind. Said she was running from her fake mom. I helped her hide in the stacks until she felt safe. She looked like your daughter, but she called herself Elsie." Elsie, the name hit me like a punch, stealing my breath. I showed Martha Abby's photo, and she nodded slowly. "That's her," she said, "but she's not here anymore. The woman she was with took her away." My mind raced. Was Abby Elsie being held by someone pretending to be her mother? The thought made my stomach churn, a mix of rage and desperation. I thanked Martha, my voice barely a whisper, and left, determined to find this woman, this fake mom who'd stolen my daughter. I spent the next days watching, waiting, asking subtle questions around town. The locals were tight-lipped, their smiles polite but guarded, but I noticed things, whispers that stopped when I approached, glances that lingered too long. Willow Creek was hiding something, and I was going to tear it apart to find my daughter. It was at the town's only grocery store, a cramped market with flickering lights, that I saw her. I was buying coffee, my eyes gritty from sleepless nights, when I heard a small voice, "Mom, can we get cereal?" The words were ordinary, but the voice was a melody I thought I'd never hear again. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw her, a girl, about 12, standing beside a woman with short blonde hair. She had Abby's dark curls, her delicate nose, but what stopped me was the scar, faint, crescent-shaped mark behind her right ear, from a fall when she was 4, when she'd tripped on the porch steps, and I'd held her, promising her it made her special. The woman, who the girl called Mom, noticed me staring, her smile tightening. She grabbed the girl's arm and hurried her out of the store, her grip too firm, too possessive. I followed them, keeping my distance, my pulse racing like a drumbeat in my chest. The woman was Nancy, a local who'd lived in Willow Creek for a few years, always smiling, always volunteering at church. But there was a wariness in her eyes, a guardedness that set my nerves on edge. I watched their house, a modest ranch-style home with a neatly trimmed lawn, for days, noting their routines. Nancy and the girl, whom she called Elsie, rarely left together. When they did, Nancy's hand was always on Elsie's shoulder, her grip firm, her eyes scanning the street. I dug through public records, with help from a friend who knew her way around databases, and found that Nancy and her husband, Tom, had moved 3 times in 5 years, always without explanation. Each move coincided with a new adoption, their paperwork suspiciously vague. The agencies listed either defunct or unregistered. One night, under the cover of darkness, I crept to their trash bins, my hands shaking as I sifted through coffee grounds, food scraps, and junk mail. Buried in the mess was a letter, torn but legible, addressed to Nancy, Eden caregiver. It referenced a delivery of a child through a group called the Eden Project, an unregistered religious organization promising to heal broken families. The letter mentioned Elsie, describing her as integrated, but warning Nancy to maintain control. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a family. This was a system. A network that took children like Abby and gave them new lives, new names, new lies. I took the letter back to my cabin, my mind racing with questions. Who was behind this? How had they found Abby? And why were they so determined to keep her hidden? I had to see her. I waited until Nancy left for work, her car pulling out of the driveway in the early morning light. Elsie was in the yard, watering a patch of flowers, her movements slow and deliberate. Her face was so like Abby's it hurt to look at her. A mirror of the girl I'd lost but older, her eyes carrying a weight no child should bear. Abby, I said softly, stepping closer, my voice trembling. She froze, her eyes wide with fear, the watering can slipping from her hands. My name's Elsie, she said, backing away. Please, leave me alone. Her voice was sharp, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, quickly buried under fear. I tried to explain, to tell her I was her mother, that I'd never stop looking for her. But she ran inside. Slamming the door, the sound echoed in my chest, a door closing on the hope I'd clung to. That night, the police came for me. Nancy had called them, accusing me of harassing her daughter. I was detained, my wrists cuffed as Sheriff Holt read me my rights, his voice heavy with disappointment. You're causing trouble. Mrs. Larson, he said, you need to stop this. Before you hurt someone, I tried to explain, to show them the postcard, the drawing, the letter, but they dismissed it all as the ravings of a grieving mother. I spent the night in a cell, the cold concrete seeping into my bones, my mind replaying Elsie's face, her fear, that fleeting moment of recognition. I couldn't give up, not now. Not when I was so close. In jail, I met Sarah, a public defender with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened when no one else would, her pen tapping against her notepad as I told her everything, the postcard, the drawing, the letter, the scar behind Elsie's ear. I believe you, she said, her voice steady, but we need proof, not just your word. While I waited for my release, she dug into Elsie's records, pulling strings with a friend in the county clerk's office. What she found was damning. Elsie's birth certificate was a forgery. The signatures inconsistent, the dates off by years. Sarah managed to get a DNA test ordered, using a strand of hair I'd kept from Abby's brush, tucked in my wallet like a talisman. The results came back a week later, a 99.9% match. Elsie was Abby. I was right. But when I was released, Nancy and Abby were gone. Their house was empty, the flowers in the yard wilting, the mailbox overflowing with unopened bills. I sat on their porch, my hope crumbling, my hands clutching the stuffed rabbit I'd brought from home, its fur worn from years of Abby's hugs. I was about to leave, to admit defeat, when a delivery arrived, a small package with no return address, left in my cabin's mailbox. Inside was the stuffed rabbit I'd given Abby when she was 3. Its initials still sewn into its paw, tucked. Inside was a note in her handwriting. I remember you, Mom. I'm trying to come home. My heart soared and broke at the same time. She was out there, fighting to remember me, fighting to break free. Sarah and I followed the trail to New Mexico, where the Eden Project operated under the guise of a healing community in the desert. A sprawling compound surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by men with cold eyes. We infiltrated it, posing as volunteers seeking spiritual guidance. Our cover stories carefully rehearsed. The leader was a man named Daniel, and when I saw him, my breath caught. He'd been my friend in college, a charismatic psychology major who'd always talked about fixing broken lives, about building a better world. Now, he was orchestrating a network that stole children, giving them to families who believed they were saving them. He confronted me in his office, his smile cold, his eyes calculating. You abandoned her, Claire, he said, twisting the truth. After that car accident, you were unfit. We saved Abby from you. But I remembered that night, no accident, just a moment of distraction. And Abby was gone, taken by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I found Abby Elsie in the compound's garden one night, her hands dirty from tending the plants. She was shaking, her eyes filled with tears. "They told me you didn't want me," she whispered. "They made me forget. With stories, with sessions." She recorded a video, hidden on a stolen phone, detailing how the Eden Project used hypnosis to erase her past, to make her believe she was Elsie, not Abby. I took the video to the FBI, my hands trembling as I handed it over. They raided the compound, arresting Daniel and his followers. The Eden Project collapsed. Dozens of children reunited with their families, their stolen lives pieced back together. When I saw Abby again, she was hesitant, her eyes searching mine for something she couldn't name. She called me Claire, not Mom, her memories still fragmented, her trust in me a fragile thing. We moved to a small house in Oregon, away from the chaos, a place where the air smelled of pine and possibility. I gave her space, let her heal, let her find her way back to herself. One evening, as I packed away her old toys, she paused, holding the stuffed rabbit, her fingers tracing its worn fur. "Mom," she said softly, her voice trembling, "we used to plant lavender, didn't we?" It was the first true memory she'd reclaimed, a fragile thread connecting us across the years. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and pulled her close. We were broken, but we were home, and in the scent of lavender, we were starting to remember.